The wreck of the Britannic, filmed 80 years after she sank in the Aegean Sea. For Bob Ballard's expedition, it's an awe-inspiring sight.
Think of the millions and millions of hours labor is put into these ships in Belfast at Harland and Wolff. Years and years of effort on the part of so many people. Iceberg is one thing, that's an act of God, but to have mankind blow up such a wonderful work, that's a waste.
Britannic's giant propellers, 23 feet wide, played a gruesome role during the sinking. After the explosion, the ship had lain motionless. The captain, isolated on the bridge, didn't know the crew had already begun to load lifeboats. In a last-ditch effort to save the ship, he gave the order to start up the propellers and head for the nearby island of Key.
They wanted to beach the boat where there was sand, the other side of the island. And so the minute we touched the water, she went on, and the propellers were coming up. And turning. At the back it was a whirlpool. The lifeboat in front of me and the one behind were drawn in by the propellers, cutting to ribbons. If anybody escaped from those boats, it was because they jumped out and perhaps could swim away.
The propellers nearly killed Nurse Violet Jessup. She was one of the few known people who survived sailing on all three Sisters of the White Star line.
Violet Jessup, whom I had interviewed for a book, told me that she was not only on the Titanic when it went down, she was also on the Olympic when it had not a very serious accident, but there was a collision in Southampton water. Then the hat trick that she was also on the Britannic as a nurse's aide is extraordinary. Violet told me that she got into a lifeboat which was lowered down, and when it reached the water and was cast loose from the blocks, the descending blocks, she suddenly saw everybody jumping out. So Violet jumped over the side and thought she was going to sink forever, and finally came up and hit the bottom of the lifeboat. Her head fitted as she came up. Then she groped around in the dark, thinking her end was nigh, and found a hand, a man's hand, which she could tell was alive, and they held their hands together and came up to the surface.
Leaving the propellers behind, Ballard guides the ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, towards the bow for a first look at the most dangerous part of the wreck, the jagged gash caused by the explosion. The damage depicted by Marshall based on Cousteau's accounts gives cause for concern. The jagged hull plating could sever the ROV's umbilical cord.
Keep going. There's the beginning of the gash. So now go left and drive the gash line down to the left.
Marshall and Mills have switched to the second monitor. With 3D glasses, they see much more detail.
I mean, the size of the blast, you've got 600 tons of coal in that area. It's just huge, it's unbelievable. I think that if it's buckled in and then buckled out, that must have been the impact as it hit the deck.
Pivot left, drop
The bow is buckled off to the starboard side, and we're just seeing that stub toe effect of it, just the bow buckled in and twisted, and the rest of the ship just bent apart, buckled and collapsed into the sand. So we're seeing this 30, 40 foot wide gap down at the keel level. It looked as if it was at the bilge. It looked about 30 or 40 feet wide.
Higher up, yeah.
And it can't be the damage actually caused by the minor torpedo, because the ship would have sunk in 5 or 10 minutes with a hole that huge.
Yeah.
When Britannic's bow hit the ocean floor, the impact made such a huge gash it hid any trace of the hole made by the explosion. No evidence here on the issue of mine versus torpedo. But the gash may tell us why the watertight doors failed to close. A single torpedo or mine of that era could have damaged 2 compartments at most. The watertight doors should have contained the flooding, but she sank in less than an hour. What went wrong? The evidence lies buried deep inside the gash.
Stand right. Okay, go over there. In the clean area. Go to clean water. Go back. Kick back. Now. Now.
Ballard is afraid of losing an ROV inside the gash.
Keep pan down on that. More. Pan down. Switch cameras now and just let it.
This side has a large shifted area of hull. It comes down right here, and then it like comes up on a different plane, and there's this large section that sticks out maybe like that. This is very festooned with growth. The rigging that attached inside there, these stays which are supposed to be there, but they're not, go like this.
Here was a Britannic. Effectively, she was a commissioned ship in the Admiralty in a war zone, and she was travelling with the doors open. It should never have happened. The only thing we can assume is that round about 8 o'clock in the morning, when the damage occurred, the explosion, the watertight doors must have been open so that the firemen could change their watch. Now, the firemen normally bunked in the forward ends of the ship and maybe some aft. And to get to their boiler rooms, they would walk down a fireman's tunnel into the specific compartments, all 6 along here. Now, come 8 o'clock in the morning, when the watch changes, the doors would have been open so that they could get through with a minimum of fuss, which is fine, no problem. But unfortunately, the Britannic happened to hit whatever she hit at the exact wrong moment.
But even if the doors were open when the flooding began, they should have closed automatically.
Maybe when the explosion occurred, the bulkhead that the watertight door was in shifted slightly, so the jam went out of alignment so the door couldn't be forced closed.
The ROVs reveal another clue to the rapid sinking. Several portholes were wide open.
A number of portholes along this particular deck here should not have been open, but they were. Now, strictly speaking, they should not have been, but it was a case of they were arriving at Madras later that morning. They were airing the ward for the patients who would be going in there.
As the ship settled by the bow and listed to starboard, it brought the portholes underwater, which let water into the undamaged compartments.
If this is correct, the immaculate safety system on the Britannic was undone by human error. Operating in a war zone, she was a disaster waiting to happen. A final mystery remains. Was the sinking by mine or torpedo? Accidental or deliberate? Would a German U-boat attack a Red Cross ship protected by the Geneva Convention? Cousteau's team suggested that the Britannic may have been carrying an illegal cargo of arms and munitions. If true, this might explain why the British Admiralty gave out an incorrect location.
Why was the wreck so badly misplaced? I mean, 8 miles is quite considerable when you consider there are very easily identifiable landmarks in sight. Basically, the theories that are coming up are the Admiralty deliberately misplaced the ship so that there could be no exploration. Had divers gone down, they may have found the Britannic was indeed carrying weapons, which she should not have been.
But despite many hours surveying the wreck, Ballard found no trace of arms. With no evidence of a motive, does the torpedo theory still make sense?
I say torpedoed.
Torpedo. Torpedoed.
Torpedoed. Torpedoed.
One thing we mustn't forget about the First World War, in Britain in particular, was the absolutely rabid paranoia about what the Germans would do. So the consensus was, when the Britannic went down, which not many people knew, you see, don't forget this was cloaked in wartime secrecy. This was not something that was as publicized as the Titanic loss. The perception was that it was somehow a German torpedo. Now, beastly as they used to say the Germans could be, I don't think they would have torpedoed a hospital ship.
But in February 1916, another hospital ship, the Asturias, was attacked with torpedoes in the English Channel. Her Red Cross markings were no defense, though she did manage to escape.
It was after the war that things began to be a little bit clearer. Among the captured German papers, there was evidence that the U-73, a German long-range mine-laying submarine, had laid mines in the Kier Channel at the end of October. Now, that was a full month before the Britannic was in the area, but it would appear that this particular barrage was in exactly the same place that the Britannic was sunk.
The U-boat's logbook contains the strongest evidence against the torpedo theory.
The U-73 belonged to a class consisting of U-71 through U-80. And these were relatively small submarines, and they were mine layers. They were not really known for their torpedoing capabilities, although they did have some.
The logbook of Commander Gustav Zeiss was made public after the war. It gave precise coordinates for the placement of 12 mines off the island of Key. The U-boat dived 65 feet down to escape detection.
We also have the interview done by British intelligence services of a prisoner of war. He said, without any doubt, the Britannic had hit a mine that had been laid by the U-73.
If she was sunk by a mine, the anchor and chain used to hold the mine in place must lie somewhere on the seabed.
This is the mine, the type of mine that the U-73 laid just before the Britannic passed through this channel. This is what the Germans claim the ship hit. And the British naturally said it was a torpedo. And so if we find this and around it debris, particularly from the bow, then it'll pretty well ice it that it hit a mine. So we have an idea of when we're seeing something, if we want to take a picture, where we're taking the picture.
In search of the mine's remains, Ballard will use the very method that enabled him to find Titanic when so many before him had failed, the debris field theory. Titanic had split in two as she went down, spilling debris on the seabed. Underwater currents then created a mile-long trail of mechanical parts and personal belongings.
I realized that I don't want to look for the Titanic. It's only 94 feet wide. I want to look for its debris trail. And it fell 12,000 feet. In other words, could I be looking for something that was a mile long instead of 94 feet wide? Well, that's a totally different strategy.
Ballard pinpointed the Titanic by finding her debris field first. With her sister ship, the process is reversed. Wreck first, debris field second. The Britannic travelled on after she was hit, so there should be a clear debris trail from the wreck to the mine's anchor chain.
Probably recommend roughly parallel to the shore.
Well, that is. Parallel to the shore is. See, this is probably the same strike right here.
The U-boat commander's coordinates and Britannic's last recorded position are added to the equation to help the search. The NR-1 submarine is sent in to find the start of the debris field. The ROVs prepare to film the submarine's findings. The search is on for the mine. An hour passes, then an exciting discovery. Britannic's gigantic funnels, virtually intact, strewn in a distinct path leading away from the ship. A rare find at a wreck site.
Funnels have been known to just be swept away in strong winds and heavy seas sometimes on ships, so they're not like the hull itself. It's really strong, very thin metal. I'm amazed that they're still intact, that they aren't fine, that they're not corroded away. I'm amazed. Yeah, very rare. 4 Britannic funnels still virtually intact.
But are they the start of the debris trail?
We looked at these 2, and then we went out and saw a single funnel. If we go back through the, sight along from the center of the wreck to this funnel and this bunch of funnels, and then the next one out there, that would start us on the trail toward the course the ship was taking, and could lead us back through the debris trail to the spot where the mine, we think it was a mine, actually blew up.
With the support ship due back in port, time is short.
So if they just dropped, 10, 15 feet down, it'd make a huge difference down.
The NR-1 follows the funnel's trail back towards the U-boat commander's coordinates in search of the debris field.
And let's see, like I said, when we get to the end, we're going to make a...
You can see the little squares going this way.
The submarine's cameras scan the sea floor for telltale pieces of hull plating. Hours pass. Then disappointing news. No sign of an anchor chain.
Second target's about 5.5 miles.
The team check through the film, searching for any clue they might have missed.
I think you see something because you want to see something.
Well, you see so much of nothing that anything would be good.
Now there's another one of those cylindrical
But see,
things.
look at this. I mean, you've got a perfectly square, or
Maybe
a
it's a-
perfectly rectangular.
Maybe it's a flame?
It's just like the thing we saw before. All these things, nothing has to do with mines, and nothing has to do really with...
Well, that's the interesting thing. We've not found one trace yet of anything to do with the submarine which we know was there.
No.
We know she laid the mines. We know she laid 2 barrages of 6 mines, and yet all the scans we've done so far indicate nothing at all.
To my mind, it's a simple matter of taking a compass and drawing 1 mile radiuses or radii out from the wreck site, and we may be just looking too close to the wreck. I mean, it's got to be at least 2 miles away to the south or to the southwest where these mines were.
The only conclusion we can come to is that the German captain, Gustav Seiss, probably got his position wrong. I have a feeling that they're a bit further to the southwest, somewhere down there.
Time has run out. No trace of an anchor chain or even a debris field. For now at least, how the Britannic was sunk must remain a mystery.
You say this is on a slightly telephoto sort of setting?
I'm not quite sure. There's no real way we can tell.
But Dr. Bob Ballard is far from disappointed.
There's something mystical about a great ship like this. It's sort of like to solve everything is to make it no longer important. I'm real happy. Having been disappointed by the Lusitania, having gone out to find this perfect ship and to find something that was far worse than the Titanic, far worse, just destroyed, pile of junk in the bottom of the ocean, to then come and find that perfect ship. I mean, this is the most perfect ship of this vintage. I mean, certainly sink one tomorrow and it'll look prettier, but this is the most perfect ship I've ever seen. I think the Britannic, when everyone sees how well preserved it is, it'll lead the way, and then I will move into the next phase.
But before leaving the wreck, there's one last task to perform.
In the memory of those who perished in the sinking of the HMHS Britannic, November 21st, 1916, and dedicated to all those who lost their lives in the war of 1914 to 1918, not in battle, but still in service to their country, presented by the Titanic.
The plaque will be the only sign that the expedition was ever here.